You're listening to SM Media.
Hi, folks, and welcome to your latest episode of the Celtic Report, your exclusive SM Media Celtic podcast. I'm Scott McPike. It's always a pleasure to be your host, and it is always a delight. And we try to get the best people on when it's a very positive show, and I don't think there's anybody better to discuss Celtic with other than the one and only Stewart Ross. Stewart, always a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You say that the last time you had me on was at the Euros after
That's right, yeah.
Scotland Hungary, so not
That's
always the
right.
best
That's
time.
right. But like in terms of we obviously haven't done a show for a few, but I think the last show we did was after opening game, I think was Kilmarnock, I think it was. And one thing that's been glaringly obvious in the meantime is that this is a Brendan Rodgers side now. That's now you can argue it was towards the end of last season, but you have now Brendan Rodgers has got his stamp on this side. Before we get into talk about any sort of game and detail, this is Brendan Rodgers at his best.
Yeah, I think you're just seeing that kind of come together. Well, obviously, probably towards the end of last season and the pre-season, and it's just kind of followed into the season. It's just probably been as given where Celtic were last Christmas, start of the year. It's not a huge turnaround, but you can argue pretty much everyone's went pretty much as well as could be expected since then. Like I say, it's all just kind of fed into each other. Even the transfer window, which we'll maybe touch on later, was probably as Brendan Rodgers said himself, probably not timing wise ideal. I think it's ended up being about as good as can be expected as well. So yeah, it's all just kind of clicked into place, and I think that was a big part of Sunday was that it was pretty much the same team as last season. They've just got that cohesion now. Just his ideas, obviously, just being that bit more drilled into the players up against a team who are going through a bit of a transition, and that just kind of led to a bit of a almost inevitability towards Sunday. And you don't always think that going into these games, but it's kind of just panned out the way many kind of expected.
Obviously, kind of leading into the Rangers game, what was your kind of main takeaways from the likes of obviously the cup game, like obviously going to Easter Road and winning, like looking relatively comfortable so far, like beating Kilmarnock fairly comfortably, winning at St Mirren. I mean, Celtic really haven't had to get out of first gear, but there's been wee eye-catching things like for me. But in terms of yourself, like, leading into the Rangers game, what do you think has been quite impressive so far with the kind of the small subtle changes that we've seen?
Just that control, just like you say, it's hard to kind of tell, and you kind of thought Sunday might be that. Maybe touching a wee bit going to the game, first 10 minutes aside, it probably wasn't as big a challenge as would have expected. Saying that, like I said, not had a massive challenge potentially. You can kind of pick those games apart and say, right, well, come on, look, first game of the season, in the middle of Europe, Hibs again seem to continually be in a state of flux, and something again, kind of off the back of Europe, they've had a bit extra kind of work in them at this point, and I think they kind of got things wrong maybe on the day as well, but. I just think it's that. I think it's been the control. It's been obviously the early goals have been a hallmark of that. That just in terms of for a Brendan Rodgers side especially, just when he wants control, wants the ball all the time. I think obviously a wee bit different Sunday, maybe touch on that as well. But I think just having that control and just at no point they've kind of looked like there was going to be an issue. Like I said, a lot of that is having that cohesion, having that same side almost, the same backline. Casper Schmeichel's just seamlessly slotted in where Joe Hart was, and arguably improved in a few ways. And
Jing in terms of distributions, the main thing.
Distribution, that's a big thing. I think maybe not so much. It might well be, we've seen little glimpses of, like you say, there's been glimpses of that being one of the things. His distribution perhaps being something that might give Celtic a better chance in Europe. But yeah, I think there's wee bits and pieces but like I say, I think it's control, and there's people have talked about it, and he's talked about it himself. Rodgers, kind of the way they've pressed the game as well.
Yeah,
how quickly they've done that, the counter pressing and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, like I say, you still feel how well everyone's gone. There's not quite been tested yet, but given what he's managed to do with what was already there, plus you can then start dropping in some of these guys that have come in over the next few weeks after the break and see, it's been pretty impressive. But you're still, how's that going to be on the absolute top stage in terms of Champions League still?
Yeah, and obviously Champions League, some we'll touch on kind of towards the end, but I didn't again. It was maybe because and I'll be honest, I've said this to, and every kind of pod I've been doing lately, I've not paid a lot of attention to what's been going on over the past couple of weeks. But one thing that I noticed this week, and I think it is because of kind of how busy both sides were in kind of deadline day and things like that. This game kind of just came about. Like, there wasn't a lot of hype. It was quite a, do you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of preview. There wasn't a lot of kind of build towards this game. It just kind of sprung upon us. But that was because of how busy Celtic were in deadline day. Now, Matt O'Reilly obviously leaves, and I think, Stuart, we do need to touch on O'Reilly is just in terms of what he did for Celtic, and just the perfect example of how a player trading model works. Matt O'Reilly for Celtic is probably one of the biggest success stories I can remember in modern time. Just with the fact he wasn't the first choice that Ange had in that position, to come in, do what he did, just kick on massively under Rodgers, and then we've seen he's going to go to Brighton, and obviously he's been very unlucky with the injury, but he's going to go to the Premier League and just kick on again. What a player he's been.
Yeah, and I think it was probably almost quite a good thing that he kind of, in some ways, there was inevitability about that deal, and you're thinking, well, you kind of want these things to happen quite soon, so you're not then scrambling, which kind of happened to some extent. But almost having him through pre-season and through those opening few games, just and something that plenty of people praised him for, and you could see easily was how professional he was during that. I mean, you obviously knew his interview with Brian. It was quite clear that that's where he was going for a long time. But you were almost, it was almost so much that you were sort of starting to think, well, maybe he does, maybe he will stay for another year. But yeah, I think certainly in modern times, one of the best bits of kind of business, and the kind of, I said before about, like, so Tierney, Jota was maybe a bit different in terms of where he went. Was probably a bit unique situation, but in terms of return on investment and that showing that pathway of you bring someone in at that 2021, you have 2-3 seasons. If you can show what you're doing, there's the pathway down there at Premier League or elsewhere. And yeah, I think it was probably going to be a big question of how they were going to play. I don't think they're going to replace him with one person. I don't think it was going to be possible, but between Bernardo potentially stepping up and putting in a pretty good performance on Sunday, bringing in a kind of marquee signing who won't be the same as Matt O'Reilly, probably a slightly different player as well, but bringing him in and then bringing in a really kind of proven player at sort of Premiership level as well, you kind of go, well, actually, that's probably quite a good kind of replacement. Not, everyone's going to say, oh, replace that, who's the replacement? But I think between that, the kind of mix and adding Hatate and McGregor and stuff, then hopefully, the test will be, how much people won't talk about O'Reilly in terms of it's been a miss. But it's certainly a player that I loved watching and loved, probably wrote more articles about than any other player in the last couple of years since I've been doing this kind of stuff. And one that will be interested to see. Obviously, like you say, it's really unfortunate to get that literally 5-10 minutes in his debut to get that injury, but one that you will kind of enjoyed watching so much that you'll kind of want to keep an eye on how he gets on and hopefully gets over that injury quick and can kick on down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the four that came in kind of deadline day, like I want to kind of assess them kind of later on. Obviously, all four made the bench, and I am excited about a few of them. I'm excited about one in particular that we haven't mentioned yet. But just in terms of the kind of team news, obviously, I think it was the team we all expected. I think obviously the issue with Kyogo's been, is he fully fit? Is he fully kind of ready in terms of, like, I think the thing with Kyogo is, and I was keen to get your thoughts on this, it's clear he's struggling with injury. Like, there's clearly something up with his shoulder. I think at times though, because he's so intelligent, because his IQ is just light years ahead of anybody in Scotland, he's sensible in the way he kind of moves about the park against kind of tough physical sides. But the problem, the issue I've got is that, is there enough depth there if something happens? Because I know what Ida's obviously been a big outlay, and I do think Ida's going to be a big player. But are you worried that there's enough depth in the striker position if Kyogo, because he's going to need that surgery eventually, but can he just keep getting ignored? Is there a worry though the worst might happen and it might go at some point, and then you're left with Ida. You could play Maeda as a false nine, I understand that, but I can't help but think there's a wee bit light in that striker area.
Yeah, well, I think Rogers kind of said he was looking for, another a third. You need kind of your marked Rocco Valla to be that kind of third choice. Didn't seem to be, there was kind of loose links with another striker, but more younger profile who could come in and get just a customised and play the odd game here and there. It's probably a really difficult position to identify a player who fits that profile, who's not going to want loads of game time right away, and you ideally need that player to be kind of flexible. Ideally, somebody who could play across the front line, who could then could give minutes maybe there as well. Maeda through the middle, yeah, but then again, if you think we'll go down that route, then there certainly seemed to be a push for another winger, and I think that was probably the one position that's been missed here during the window. But again, if you brought in 2 or 3 last summer, you brought in Kuhn, January. There was a bit of chat about Palmer, but I think it seemed that there needed to be one moved out there, whether it be permanently with him or loan for Yang or whatever. There just didn't seem to be enough space, but there seemed to be a push to just get out that bit more quality. If you could have done that, then you can say, well, we've got Maeda who can cover those both positions, and we've got plenty of depth at winger that we're not going to rely on him there all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it'll be one that will maybe be a January that you could look at, potentially some markets like Scandinavia, one of the leagues maybe play kind of the calendar year, and somebody, or MLS, maybe somebody coming towards the end of who would be ready to come in at that kind of time and get a bit of bedding in. And if they need that extra depth the second half of the season, they'd be there, and that'd give them a bit of time to bed in ahead of the following season. So, yeah, I think I'm not overly concerned just now. The Kyogo thing, you think if he would want to do it, he would have done it by now. He clearly doesn't want to do it and will have that time away. So you just have to manage it. It's a personal decision, I suppose, and if he's fit, and like you say, it is a worry that if you lose him for any significant period between now and January, and you're relying on Ida, quite quickly he'll look quite short. But hopefully, touch wood, that doesn't happen. And I think the transfer speculation, I think the fact obviously he does come in for a lot of money, maybe feeling I know as far as I'm concerned, and many will probably consider he's still the number one striker. but maybe just feeling, he's not the absolute kind of go-to there. But you see on Sunday what he brings is just, and I think Rodgers knows that he wouldn't, he would play that in front of him if he felt in those games, and I think he will play most of the Champions League games and most of the big games this season. Regardless if there's that worry, it's been there for a while now. So, but you see what he brings on Sunday in terms of that. I need like adding that different bits to his game as well in terms of coming off the front line and being able to link it a bit as well. So yeah, just touch wood that doesn't happen. It's not ideal, but
yeah. In terms of the team on Sunday, I thought kind of exactly what I thought it would be. I thought Kuhn was probably the one you thought maybe Forrest would play, but Kuhn I thought was really good as well. Maybe wasn't effective, but like maybe wasn't kind of like his end product maybe wasn't there, but I thought it was very effective most of the game. But first 10 minutes, as you say, Rangers were aggressive. Rangers were aggressive in the press, but the problem that Rangers had is that you have to make that count. You have to score. Now not score, but you have to really put Celtic under pressure at that point. And then you saw, I mean, it is literally one pass and Celtic are through and goal. And Kuhn goes ever so slightly early, but it's not like monstrous. It's a good call, obviously, with VAR to disallow the goal. But I think Celtic at that point, you would look at that and go, Rangers, right, that's a let off for Rangers. But what it actually does is it actually kind of makes Rangers think, wait a minute here. We've been aggressive the first 10 minutes and they cut through us like butter. That's a bit of a panic. Whereas Celtic kind of go, that's exactly what Celtic look at it, go, right, we can get through here pretty comfortably, and that's you see what happens.
Yeah, I think you kind of was a wee bit surprised just how aggressive they went in that first 10 minutes. Are we going to cope with that? Probably didn't cope with it brilliantly. A couple of loose passes and stuff, but just how much first time, like so that first pass, McGregor gets off the back of Diamande. I think knows that he's got that first time passing them, and the space is opened up, and
it's wide open.
It's at that point, it's kind of probably a kind of collective decision on the pitch of the players, probably not so much a manager going, right, well, do we stick to this? Do we keep pressing high? We know we've just seen what could well happen. Or do we start falling back a wee bit? And that's obviously what happened.
What do you do in that situation though? Because this is something I kind of thought about myself, is that if you've got a game plan like that, which is very much focused on pressing high and hope and trying to keep it compact, when your game plan kind of gets exposed like that relatively early, and you get that let off, do you stick with it? Do you stick with the game plan, or do you completely change it? Because I don't think they do either, to be honest.
No, I kind of fall back into that kind of more kind of mid block and kind of just standing off a wee bit, and then Celtic can get into the patterns and that kind of thing. Because you're saying you watch that first time, it's you can't really keep this up.
No,
even
you can't.
Teams very top of Europe, that will be kind of the approach, and that's obviously like you say, that's the kind of how Celtic react to that in Europe. Maybe any of the teams that have gotten the first those 8 games won't be at the absolute elite, but they'll still be better than Rangers, probably quite a few of them. And Dortmund, Leipzig, those kind of get teams. It was like, right, well, I understand that you then kind of sit off a bit, but you can then pick your moments. I think maybe towards the end of the first half they did a wee bit again, but it needed to be a wee bit more, because that's probably, like you say, if you're going to go for that, you need to commit to it. You need to not go, all right, well, it's gone really wrong there, and it's a kind of this almost like spooked, and you're like, right, well, we need to go back to something that's a bit more kind of safe. But it just allowed Celtic to grow into the game and started picking holes, and that sort of thing. So I don't want to sit thinking too long about how Rangers would get the better Celtic, but you're almost like, it's probably not the best way, especially in terms of Rangers probably not having the talent that they maybe even had last season. But even that kind of, you probably look at the kind of Gerrard teams and that, when we're getting closer, better Celtic on occasions, and COVID season and all that, even then, it wasn't built on dominating the ball and being the dominant team. It was kind of built on kind of having a structure and, getting really distances right and picking the moments and sitting and trying to frustrate, because you're going away, especially when there's still no other fans and the crowd, you kind of you open up, allow yourself to be opened up like that within 10 minutes. The ball's in the net, all right, it's ruled out, but that's it now. It's just Celtic can see, crowd get up, and I would just think if you were doing that, you would try and frustrate and try and slow things down and try and um, make things more difficult, and then pick your moments to go at it right from the start. Probably not the best kind of approach.
Because the glaring thing to me was, and you obviously mentioned that the last time we did a pod was the Scotland-Hungary game, and I think we both had the same mindset, whereas Hungary kind of just sat back and allowed Scotland to kind of make a mistake. That's kind of what happened in that game. It's kind of, I'm not saying Celtic did that, but what it looked to me is that it wasn't like Celtic were too alarmed with the high press of Rangers in the early stages. They knew eventually that would burn out, and I mean, it burns out after 11 minutes, and then Rangers just completely turn to right. That's kind of what happens. We don't really know how to cope with this, and then Celtic just are in the front foot, and you see it's just a really well worked goal. It's a goal Celtic have been able to score many times. Celtic do really well in that kind of the overloads in that right hand side. Bernardo, I want to single out. You've singled them out in your social media. The impressive thing about Bernardo to me was, and this is something we've seen in these types of games, and it's something that kind of speaks volumes on a Celtic side. He just rises to that big game. Like you saw a lot of Rangers players struggle to handle that are maybe at similar age to Bernardo. He's just got that intensity. He's just got that character that I'm going to go and have an overload on the right side with Johnson, who I thought was terrific as well, and he's been probably a standout so far this season, but when you've got characters like that and they just slot in so easily and they rise to that occasion, the first goal, I mean, Maeda does very well as well. And again, it was a bit of a mismatch who he was up against in the Rangers' right side. But you can only beat what's in front of you. I get that, but there were so many positives to take for that first goal because it is just so well worked.
Yeah, and it's just I think that's particularly that right hand side is just a bit of a mismatch in terms of
total mismatch.
Jeffy, I think, looks a guy who's more comfortable going forward than defending. Matondo's not going to give you a huge amount off the ball either. And that midfield three of Rangers, I think most Rangers fans seem pretty comfortable with that. That was probably the one they wanted to go with rather than Lawrence, but just didn't, feel like, especially having Barn as the kind of deepest one, just having that kind of the physicality to match Celtic, and Bernardo in particular was his standout. They're able to get about the park, snapping at challenges, getting onto those balls, and yeah, like say that right hand side, that just and the goal was just, I think it's a throw in actually, and it's just it's probably not too overcomplicated in terms of I think Kuhn comes inside, Bernardo keeps that width to then play the part that opens up the channel for Johnson, and it's a nice pass from Bernardo, and yeah, seen him getting into that position quite a bit towards the end of last season. Johnson that right into the kind of byline, right at the kind of for those kind of pullbacks, had the one just after as well, not long after for Maeda again. So yeah, that was really encouraging to see, and I think those bits of play and the speed, in that front line with Maeda, Kyo and Kuhn. So like I say, he was probably should have an assist for the one Hatai at the back post, but that's a front three that you can see causing most of those teams in Champions League run of fixtures issues.
Do you think that's the best front three?
Yeah, I think so, and I think for what you need off the ball as well in Europe, you need, obviously you can't. Maeda's just It's almost like having another man on the pitch at
It's
times.
just it's like Duracell body. It's just so it's bags
Yeah,
and bags of energy, and especially in that type of game though, where as we say, and again, I don't want to keep talking about. He just did so much. There was times where he had 10 yards to make up, and he made it up no bother because the guy against him just couldn't handle him. And we've seen that countless times. But again, Maeda's just so unique in those types of games. I don't remember a player. And one thing we can say about Maeda is, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, he's not the best player we've ever seen. Like, do you know what I mean? There's going to be 100 players you'll see in a Celtic shirt that's far more technical. But I don't think there's many you can count in one hand who offer you as much energy and can do the job he does.
yeah, I think kind of almost tailor-made for those kind of derby
Mm-hmm.
matches where he gets that bit more space. Because Rangers are, like I said, talking there about how they maybe should have approached it, or how there's different ways of going about it. That's not always going to go down great with supporters. And come on, still not 100% sure what is kind of, but he's never going to, doesn't seem to be the one that's going to totally shut up shop. So that gives Maeda space to run into. That's his biggest threat in behind, is with the pace and stuff. Um, and then obviously off the ball, just having an extra, almost an extra man buzzing about in these kind of fixtures is massive. And with it's particularly now with Tavernier, it's just kind of almost beyond almost the point to feel sorry for the guy, because it's just it's a mismatch. And
Yeah.
I think even even 2 3 years ago, Tavernier, when he's you can see he's probably lost a bit of pace now. Even then, he was struggling to deal with him. So you kind of you think, well, if he's just going to do the same thing again, just hope Maeda's had a bad night's sleep or something. Yeah, I think he's almost like I say, I think he's almost tailor made for this fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you say, and I get there's still those two, I think 2 3 crosses maybe that are sclaffed out the park, but you can't. His strengths far outweigh his
Yeah,
weaknesses. Like if
definitely.
he had that other parts of his game, he's probably playing for Real Madrid.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's kind of key. He's key to that front. They always go back to early Ange when he kind of remember he kind of went with kind of Jota, Giakoumakis, and Maeda in the real early kind of stages when Maeda came in, and you thought that front three linked very well. You're seeing something similar, obviously, with Maeda's obviously got the kind of work rate. Kyogo's obviously your intelligent forward, whereas Kuhn's got a bit more of the kind of the pace and he's got more of the kind of technical attributes. Like I just find that front three really linking up well, as you say, in Europe, because they all do different things and they're all very, very good at different things, but they've all got their very, very good one thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that kind of it's quite difficult to point out, but like we know that front three links really well. As you say, Forrest can come in, Palmer can come in, he does there as well. There's a lot of options. Defensively, I thought Celtic were excellent. Johnson so far this season, I think, has been an absolute standout. He just seems to be like if a Rangers player suffers any early booking, you're a bag. If you're a Rangers fan, you're a bag of nerves watching them. Johnson to me is a perfect example of just how someone who relishes this fixture. Character wise, he's perfect. He's a defender first and foremost. I mean, look at the right back for Celtic, look at the right back for Rangers. That's a mismatch. Do you know what I mean? Like just in terms of this fixture, Johnson's another one that kind of understands the job he has to do. But the one thing is, he's so solid defensively, and first and foremost, that's the kind of embodiment of his game. That's what you want from your right back. And there's a partnership there with him and Kuhn. I thought at times they just linked beautifully.
Yeah, yeah, and Bernardo as well. I'd say I think it's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of three, kind of those guys making those movements that are opening up that um kind of inside channel, like kind of underlap. He's not having to go, he's lot of them to go round, so he's got this kind of less of a kind of run, less distance to cover. He can still cover it really quickly, not quickly enough. He's super quick, but um, he's got that pace and power to attack that space. And um, I think Greg Taylor as well. I mean, I know come on to recruitment or the sign-ins and bringing in our left back was absolutely necessary. But I think again he's one that was really good on Sunday and has been really good again this season. And again, as a player, everyone knows where the shortcomings are there, and will they? Yeah, they probably will be exploited perhaps in Europe. But I thought on the ball he just he's so much intelligence, and um, I think he looks even a wee bit maybe stronger, a bit more physical. It's him that kind of shoves Cherny off the ball and then plays it into. He'll go for the goal. And again, Scales, I think last time was on.
And that was his best game. That was his I thought it was his best game for Celtic. I really just.
I think I think probably again a lot of what he had to deal with was kind of long balls and the Dessers. Desser's not great in the air.
No.
Not got that physicality to match either. It's not like match Carter Vickers. Peels off onto Scales. He's probably not matching him either. So yeah, it's interesting to see how obviously brought in Trusty for a fair amount of money. So interested to see how long how that, because you don't want to chop, and I know you want depth there, but you don't, it's a position you don't want to chop and change a lot at all. So and yeah, Carter Vickers again, just almost take for granted, but just brings you that composure. I know neither him or Scales are super good on the ball, and again, that's probably a question mark with Europe. I know Schmeichel helped that a bit, but in terms of Sunday, what Rangers could offer, beyond that 10 minutes like we're talking about, wasn't enough to kind of, to trouble either of those guys. But yeah, whole defence, probably whole team you can't really fault. But yeah, I think defence, even like I say, Greg Taylor again, just kind of continuing to defy too.
What do you think of the contract situation? Because obviously, I think no matter what, I think everybody was looking for some competition, because like bringing in the boy from Barcelona, I think he is going to be like, if you look at Barcelona fan forums as I did when they signed him, they are gutted. Like they really thought it could be second choice this season for Barcelona. So I do think there is a gem there, but Taylor's contract situation is something that is kind of went under the radar a wee bit. I think, what do you do with that? Do you think he will sign a new deal, or is that something that is way too early to think about? It's something that probably needs kind of brought up quickly, though, I would say.
Yeah, because well, he could theoretically sign a pre-contract on 1st of January with somebody else. So yeah, it's something you probably don't see that happening, but in theory that could happen. It's interesting because like I say, it's such, as much as there was it's been made, that there's a pretty low release clause on Vi, to see him play. But from what bits and pieces I've seen, from what you say, reputation wise, seems somebody who could, somebody's probably still needing quite a wee bit of development, but all the kind of bits are there that you could get quite cheap. But at the same time, there's, people point the kind of Kieran Tierney situation and how that kind of plays into things, whether that's something that's down the line, and Taylor maybe thinks, will I still be the first choice? So he's then got an opportunity to probably get a pretty healthy signing on fee somewhere and get probably pretty good wages, probably potentially better wages than at Celtic somewhere, and even high in the Championship or something like that. So, but I think there'd be a market for him on a free agent for sure. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting one that, because Celtic have been pretty aggressive with contract renewals, and that's the one that kind of stands out, that This is the only kind of one I think that's run down that much. So yeah, I think it's hard to tell how that one's going to pan out. I think, like you say, when you throw in the vibe that it's just a straight loan as things stand, and it doesn't look like, certainly right away, that he's not that kind of quality that it's obvious that that's an upgrade on Taylor. It doesn't look that way yet. It's one that you can, like you say, develop a kind of rough diamond, but it'll depend on how much he impresses. I think it'll depend on how much he impresses when he gets his opportunities come the end of the season, and then you probably look at it then. But yeah, one that I think will get spoken about quite a bit more in the next couple of months.
Before half time, obviously it's 2-0, and Kyogo again, and I'm kind of running out of things to say about his intelligence and his overall kind of intellect is just night and day compared to anybody I think I've seen in a while in Scottish football. He comes deep, obviously, quite a lot, and this is something we kind of noticed early on in the season, that the goals weren't coming, but his off the ball work, I thought at times, has been sublime this season. Gets that goal. Now, Neil McCann said something interesting. He said, what a finish that is. Now, it is a good finish, but sure, the positioning for the goalkeeper's shocking. But Kyogo's just so confident. And again, this is somebody who hasn't scored this season, has missed quite a few chances. I think we've both said that. But you look at the person opposite the park, scored 5 and 6. Tell me who you would rather have in front of goal. There's only one answer. Kyogo, again, what a record he's got in these games. But again, we just take into account his willingness to run deep and get the ball was just so important.
Yeah, and again, it was that it was Taylor that wins that kind of goal with Czerny. Just Celtic just sharper to things, speed of thought, and again, Rangers seeming to be caught in that kind of halfway house. So we're still thinking about pressing high again, but maybe not. And then it's another turnover, acres of space, and Butland, I don't know. Don't think anything needs to be said there. I think it was his greatest game by any stretch of imagination, because to be honest, even the Maeda one gets a bit on it. It just looks a wee bit kind of. I think there's a lot of chop and changing in front of him in terms of centre backs and their back line, so that's maybe not helping things either. But I think there's seeing that there's a space being left there, but there's having the kind of composure, really composed finish to almost pass it. I know it obviously is, and it obviously looks like a goalkeeping error in terms of positioning, but there's still the execution of that, and that still probably maybe missed a wee bit. But yeah, like you say, in terms of execution, who would you want getting onto that and taking that shot on? Comparing the strikers against each other, and it's pretty obvious.
It's a mismatch. That's just the kind of conclusion of it. Is
two from out the box as well. Against Rangers in the last year, for somebody that doesn't really score outside the box at all, is quite interesting as well. So, like you say, but 8 and 10, it's somebody who rises to the occasion. It's somebody who thrives on the occasions, and I think that's again something that gives Celtic the edge in these games, having these players like Kyogo, like Cameron Carter-Vickers, like Callum McGregor, who are been through it enough times. They know what to expect and know how to be successful in that fixture. And you look at the Rangers side, and there's just not a lot of them that have been successful in this fixture, and new players, and I think, like I say, I think he's still the first choice Celtic striker, without a doubt.
Yeah. And into the kind of second half, obviously, the kind of changes do start. Like, a couple of big ovations, obviously. Army Engels comes on, and I watch a lot of Bundesliga, and he has. I have seen a bit of him. I'm not going to say you probably know a lot more than me, just kind of analysing things like that. You said obviously earlier that he's going to be a bit different from O'Reilly. What do you think he's going to bring? Because the one thing that really stuck out to me with the McGregor, Hattati, O'Reilly trio was they all complemented each other so well. Will Engels fit that? Do you think?
Yeah, he's a wee bit different. I think he's not like he's going to offer the same kind of maybe natural creativity that O'Reilly did. A bit more probably closer to a Bernardo mold in terms of athletic, mobile.
Mm.
Uh, will do the dirty side of the game, but not to say that O'Reilly did that as well. But I think that's more where what the kind of profile I'm gonna see. I think it's just quite hard to get a read on him. Like you say, if you've watched a bit of him, Bundesliga yourself. I watched a bit of him as well, but he's not played a huge amount. There was at 1,500 minutes last season.
And it's difficult to assess a player that's been in like Augsburg to then what like you don't
Yeah,
get a lot
it's
of the ball.
yeah, like I say that particularly data wise, that's difficult to look at that and say right. And I think more of his minutes came off the bench, so he's coming into games in different states, and it's quite a kind of noisy picture in terms of that. And you watch the clips and again, seeing him come on at different bits and show wee flashes of things, but you're not getting a full picture of that
Mm-hmm.
player. So it's one that's hard to kind of. Um, I think Al Morrison actually Celtic by numbers had kind of something that I'd put on Engels, and it's maybe more like a kind of Edward in terms of not the same kind of player, but
Yeah.
that profile that is a guy who's got a lot of obvious kind of physical and you can see a lot of technical qualities, but just maybe needs a bit of coaching, needs a defined role, needs to play a bit more football. Not going to see an £11 million player maybe right away.
No.
You're maybe going to need to give it a bit of time, but he's still only 20, and getting in the Belgium national team at 20 is not too
Mm.
bad a feat. That's another wee indicator that plenty of other people that are watching him closely, much more qualified in
Do
life
you
than
know
me.
who'd sung his praises
Yeah,
probably more than anybody? Did you hear about this?
would that be Philip Clement?
It was Philip Clement, yeah. And there was a quote obviously saying I think he was as talented as he's seen. And the one thing that really kind of stood out to me was like in terms of height, he looks tall. I think he's
Yeah,
certainly over 6 foot, like comfortably. He looks physical. He looks more of a kind of better build than O'Reilly, if that makes sense. Like he probably has a bit more of that kind of strength and kind of physicality that you're mentioning. But like Luke McCowan come on as well, and he's going to be a classic example of what Celtic are able to do. They've done it with almost in the past with likes of Christie, players like that. Player that comes in, maybe takes a wee while just to kind of settle in. You saw the occasion, like do you know what I mean? You saw. I mean, if you want a feel good look at him coming out the
yeah,
tunnel on deadline day, that's somebody who's kind of falling on his feet and wants that move. The one thing though, like I've got a couple of mates that are Dundee fans, and they just say he's the tenacity in him. Do you know what I mean? He's going to be somebody who's perfectly suited to a club like Celtic because he just has that drive, and I'm quite excited to see how he does now. He's not going to be, do you know what I mean? He's not going to get the attention of an Engels because of the value, but I think he's going to be somebody who might kind of kick on a wee bit, but he will take time as well. He's not going to come in and be straight away, and although the outlay is not as much, he will be a player who'll be a kind of bit part to start, and then you might see like a Christie where he just massively progresses in a short spell.
yeah. I think it's obviously linked to kind of what we're saying there. But Engels, if he's going to, somebody that is going to take a wee bit of time to develop, you need to take him out as well. So you need somebody like McCowan, who, like you say, maybe take a wee bit of time to settle as well.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that is proven, really proven at that level over a couple of seasons now in the Premiership, that can slot in there, and you know what you're going to get, and you've got because there's been a he was really kind of quite blunt about the likes of Kelly and maybe not seeing his future elsewhere, but then also Bosun Lawal and Home having all the technical stuff, but not having the kind of maybe the attitude or the application or whatever it was. You can see with McCowan, like you say, in terms of how much that means to him to play for his boyhood club, for him and his family, and I think he kind of said that even in the interview in Celtic TV, he was having the chat with Rodgers and already feeling like he's going to run through brick walls and stuff from. So you getting a super motivated player who's proven at a level that you can just drop in and hopefully might surprise a few people, even if it is that bit part and it's not a huge contribution. It's £1 million for a player that's probably not on a huge amount of wages. It's a 3-year deal. It's not. It's pretty low risk. So, like I say, I think between those two, and then obviously Bernardo, imagine to do a deal for him at a lesser price and having him slot in straight away. I think between those three, it just gives you a nice mix that you can kind of rotate all with every single game and every single position in midfield, but just gives you a nice mix. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I imagine you get a bit of game time those first couple of games back in terms of, I think they've got the Falkirk game. Whether not starting perhaps, but maybe getting a solid half an hour or whatever. Yeah, there'll be plenty. I think you've got quite a few games, away games after the kind of Europe games. Again, venues and kind of environments that he'll be really accustomed to and used to, that you'd be comfortable seeing him in there.
Callum McGregor has a habit of scoring goals lately, doesn't he? I mean, that's another one. And yes, it takes a deflection, but what another excellent performance without really, like, Bernardo stood out because he was all over the place. McGregor is quietly effective. That's the perfect kind of summary of him. Again, just dominates, just that midfield, just anchors it. Brilliant line that he had for McCowan as well. He says, "I'll take care of you." That's just what he does. Do you know what I mean? He's just that. You saw last season the midfield struggle without him. Do you know what I mean? Like, when McGregor's on it, and again he's adding goals to his game now a lot more. He's able to kind of get the. I mean, he'd time to have the hit on Sunday. Just he could just kick on again. Just how important he is to the side, but it just seems to be like a different. There's more of a kind of fresh air feel about him just now. It just seems a bit, without really being that kind of absolutely effective midfielder who's constantly busy. Like, he's just quietly there, and you kind of don't notice him sometimes. But again, you just look going, what a performance again! Like, it's that kind of perfect way to describe him.
Yeah, I think you can kind of see a similar kind of scenario, kind of what happened to Scott Brown. People thought he was, and there was chat last season about McGregor, with legs going. I mean, you're gonna get a bit of that, but obviously the Scotland thing, that makes a huge difference. He gets a lot more time to recover. And you seen, like I said, Brown seemed to kick on again when it looked like he was kind of almost finished. It's maybe not the exact same kind of thing, but you can see that playing in that position, having the legs of somebody like Bernardo about you, and having Hatate there to take on some of the kind of more creative, more progressing the ball a bit more, that McGregor's there to just kind of sit, keep everything ticking over, and then you can see that's he's still got that wee burst. He's still got obviously that technical passing ability to find a pass for Kuhn for the one that's chopped off. Just the way, I say, so much success in that fixture, so much experience in that fixture, that he knows how to manage it, knows how to take the sting out it, when to go for it, like that first goal that's chopped off. He manages to get off the back of Diamandi, so he then knows, right, there's space, there's he's not going to do that every single time, not force it, just pick the moment. So yeah, I think but a lot of it is, like you say, it's probably not the obvious stuff. It's the more, it's the more stuff that you can't put a number on that you get with McGregor, that experience, that know-how, when and where to go and how to talk people through the game and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, just seems to be bit of luck. Obviously, he's not going to score from outside the box for 5, 6 games in a row, but he's done it for 3 games in a row. And like I think he said himself, when you're in that kind of groove and you're feeling it, then you try these things and
Yeah.
like some gets a bit of luck, but it gets a nick, it gets a bit of luck, but it still flies in. So yeah, really important. And I think talking about that midfield kind of mix again, it's interesting. Maybe see Engels in there because as much as Scotland retiring from Scotland gives him that bit of recovery, can't still expect him at his age and with the amount of football he's already played to play every single minute of every single game. You're going to have to take him out at some point. You might be forced to take him out at some point. So who fills in there? Because again, I think a lot of people maybe a bit miffed about the Awata one.
Were you surprised about that?
A wee bit, but then I look at I think we always look at it from you're a supporter, what's best for your club. I think look at what's best for the player who's 27, who's clearly got something to offer at a decent level, not really playing a lot coming off. I mean, not made a lot of benches even at the start of the season, but maybe this was in the pipeline anyway. But Rodgers used him plenty last season and sung his praises, and I think a lot of people some people like then seeing McGregor going on one,
He's
but
way too good for League One, isn't he? Like, he's that
yeah,
like,
yeah. But I think obviously he had utility to play at the back as well. Probably be a kind of last resort, but just a really handy squad player that you knew you weren't going to get certain things, but you knew you weren't going to get a lot of other things. So yeah, I think I looked at that one and thought, right, that's probably a player thing, and you can't really grudge a guy at that age that he can maybe go down there and have 1 or 2 good seasons, or Birmingham get promoted to the Championship with a couple of seasons at playing a really good level in England, um, maybe get back towards the kind of international kind of picture as well.
mhm.
But yeah, I think that's probably an interesting one that between Engels, McCowan, Bernardo. Engels is probably the only one that you would think would be able to fill in that role. Um, I mean, the likes of Home, maybe, but doesn't seems quite far out of the picture. Not sure how suited he would be to just being that kind of single deepest player, maybe somebody alongside him. But I think quite a bit of his strengths is that kind of ball progression from deeper areas. So yeah, I think that's interesting. I think I wouldn't be surprised if you see Engels in that kind of position. Um, but yeah, Awata one, I would have selfishly wanted to keep him about. I quite like him, but I can understand that, and I can understand the thinking. If you want to develop somebody like Engels, then you give him a game or two in that position and see how he copes there, how that kind of pans out.
Obviously, as well, 3-0 win, 5 points ahead of Rangers. Celtic just look leaps ahead of Rangers in terms of domestically. Like, I kind of strongly left the weekend thinking Aberdeen could challenge Rangers for second. But we obviously had seen the draw, and again, it was another kind of reason why this kind of game against Rangers just kind of come about, the Champions League draw, which I was curious as how it was going to work, and I kind of live stream. I was quite taken by it. I thought it was quite good the way it worked. I think a lot of people are saying to get into the kind of knockout playoffs, you're going to need minimum 9 points. Looking at the home games Celtic have, and obviously we've got it up here. Home to Slovan Bratislava, RB Leipzig, Club Brugge, and Young Boys, and then you've obviously away to Atalanta, Dortmund, away to Zagreb, and then finally away to Aston Villa. Doesn't look too bad. Like, it's not a bad draw at all, but we've said that before. This new stage, I think, is very, very interesting. But I can't help looking at that, thinking that's a kind draw, especially first game, Slovan Bratislava at home. It's a chance to go off to a good start. Then there's a few difficult ones. It's the squad looks better. The squad looks more capable of a Champions League challenge. But again, we've said that before. this is a massive opportunity for Celtic, and I can't help but look at that draw thinking it's kind.
Yeah, I think obviously the pot one teams were as probably as good as you could get.
Yeah.
You know, but Leipzig at home, you know, you'd probably not fancy your chance, but you know what I mean. You back Celtic to get some against the fourth, fifth best team in the Bundesliga at home. You know, if that was the third team in a group of four, you'd look at the home game of that and think there's an opportunity for 3 points. Dortmund away is a bit difficult, and not of Celtic's issues away from home in Europe.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious. So I was just looking at those home games, and you're thinking, can you get two at a push, three home games that you would be pretty confident that, you know, if everyone's fit, if you're in good form, that there's an opportunity there to take maximum points, because it's probably hard to work out exactly what's going to be enough. Like say 9 points, yeah, somewhere in that kind of range, 9-10 points might well be enough. 2 or 3 wins, 2 or 3 draws. But this is the first time this format's ever been in play, so you don't know exactly what's going to be enough. Obviously, the last game's away at Villa Park, so that's pretty tricky. You probably don't want to be going in there thinking we need to win, but you don't know what, you know, the kind of formats, how the format's going to play out, and what, you know, there could be a whole, like they're hoping there's going to be a whole load of jeopardy and a whole load of movement in all the fixtures, that, you know, there could be 6-7 teams vying for those last couple of spots in there. But I think having short term, looking at that run of 3 home fixtures after the break in terms of Hearts in the league, and they're not in the kind of greatest shape at the moment. And then in the Slovan Bratislava game, and then Falker kind of Cup is quite a nice kind of, you know, it gives you an opportunity to get points on the board in the Champions League, get through to the semi-finals, won't it, the League Cup. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I quite enjoyed the draw and how it kind of looks like it's going to play out. But yeah, I think even young boys, and you look at that Club Brugge, I think they're a wee bit, maybe a bit more kind of pedigree in the Champions League last few seasons. But you look at Zagreb away and think, well, and I know there was obviously Atletico and all that, but for the kind of squad that he had to work with last season, Rodgers, there was portions of the away games that actually probably Celtic looked as good as they have away from home. I say like the Feyenoord game right up till half time, the goal goes in at just before half time. You thought actually not too bad, had like good structure, and Lazio away as well for periods. It just couldn't sustain it. But like you say now, you hope that the squad's in a better place, that you can, you know, like, I mean, somebody's a good example. You can bring on somebody like Engels. I know you probably start all the games, but you know that could be Bernabeu coming on, or you know, you bring on Ida for, you know, I know we had at the first start of last season, but he wasn't as fancied, and he's got more options there that he can hope we can hopefully, you know. And I'd look at the Zagreb one and think, yeah, it'd be quite back Celtic to go over there, and as much as the way things are constant kind of source of frustration or despair, that you could do some away from home as well, and that would be another kind of something to kind of go after as well. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how it pans out. And like I say, I think that first game back Bratislava, given if you can, you know, you get the win against Hearts, and just keep things rolling into that you would really fancy, especially being the first one, probably going to be favourites to get points on the board right away, and take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. But we will obviously be over the top of the Champions League stage coming up. Stewart, it is always a pleasure to go through Celtic with you. Obviously, it's a bit better, obviously, when there's a result like that. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on, mate. It's always a pleasure.
No, thanks for having me on.
And we will see you all soon. Obviously, we won't be on next week due to the international break. We'll be on the week after, and we'll be looking ahead to the Slovan Bratislava game. So we'll see you for that. Thank you very much, folks, and enjoy your international break. Thank you.